It may be absurd to equate the history of a Disney ride to a daytime soap opera, but the circumstances surrounding the closing of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride is rumored to be an inside job. But there's also a point that shows that being closed was the right decision. In its ashes, we got another aquatic based attraction. Today, we'll look at both and see which one stands the test of time. Welcome back to the series where we take a look at original Disney ride and see what came after it to compare to see which was the better attraction. These next two videos will be a little bit different because technically, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train replaced 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Journey of the Little Mermaid was built from the ground up. Snow White's Scary Adventure was replaced by a meet and greet, but I feel all four attractions needed to be addressed. So my solution is to compare the two sea attractions and the two Snow White attractions after the Fantasyland expansion took place. But before we get started, let me know your Disney memories. I do a series where I read comments from the viewers about their times in the parks. And if you've never been, feel free to ask a question so no one is left out. But without further ado, let's discuss the history of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. October 14th, 1971. Debuting 13 days after Magic Kingdom opened, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was an ambitious dark ride. Now, when you think of dark rides, you can immediately picture a show building in your mind. Recall the way it smells, and the feeling of relief when you feel the air conditioned halls. But here, the water was the show building. 12 submarines were able to hold 38 people and would circle a giant pool. The walls of the pool would be identical, so no matter which side of the sub you were on, the ride experience would be the same. The portholes even came equipped with buttons to attempt to defog the glass in case of condensation. Now, I've used the word submarine to describe the ride vehicles, but really that's a misnomer. The water would never submerge the boats, so they just came up to the porthole. The illusion of water depth was by making scenes darker the longer the ride went on. Considering that the tank held 11.5 million gallons, the undertaking to construct a ride of this magnitude in the early 70s is really nothing short of astounding. The queue was outdoors and was basically just a dock with a chain link railing. You'd enter the submarines through a hatch on the top, and guests were greeted by a creepy organ music as Captain Nemo himself narrated your journey. Hundreds of thousands of tiny bubbles would fly past the portholes, giving the illusion of going deeper and deeper into the ocean depths. The first animals you discover are sea turtles, as Nemo describes them as descendants of dinosaurs, an appetizer for the larger and more vicious creatures who are yet to come. You go on to see giant sea bass as well as giant clams, and after passing some impressive looking coral reefs, you see a diver from a satellite ship hunting for fish through thick kelp beds. The sub dives deeper and things start to get darker in more ways than one. You see a graveyard of ships as they're covered in barnacles before entering a polar ice cap. The darkness is broken up by a flood of light as Nemo explains the aurora borealis has hit the night sky and as well the ocean depths. As you go further, you see structures that look like they were man-made. Nemo has an epiphany that this may be the lost city of Atlantis. He talks about the legends of mermaids and sea serpents. First Mate Baxter claims he sees a sea serpent, but Nemo chastises him, saying Baxter has lost his mind, but unfortunately for everyone on board, those tales are true. As the vessel goes further into the darkness, the climax of the ride is a battle with the giant squid as the submarine desperately tries to escape. Thankfully, you make it out alive and are able to enjoy the rest of your vacation. Now, remember when I mentioned there were only 12 ride vehicles and they each held less than 40 people? That would become a problem since the ride was so popular. Only serving less than 500 guests per rotation led to an extended wait times. That's not even taking into account the wear and tear the submarines themselves were under. Over time, the defoggers would stop working and making it near impossible to see out of the portholes. Leaks would start forming in some vehicles as well. It was costly and time-consuming to take the subs out of the rotation, not to mention the upkeep for almost 12 million gallons of a water tank. It was only a matter of time before Disney would have to weigh their options and cut their losses with the possible too ambitious project, and on September 5th, 1994, that's exactly what happened. At first it was framed as just a refurbishment, but it was set to reopen in the summer of 1996. But in April of 96, it was announced that this beloved ride would be gone for good. But there were efforts to try to reopen it, and this is where the soap opera comes into play. In 1995, Disney execs wanted to see if they could reopen this ride instead of having a huge unused plot of land in their pristine theme park. Rumor has it that cast members hated this ride so much that they tried to convince Disney it wasn't worth their time, fearing the ride was unsafe for all involved. Their efforts were ignored, and Michael Ovitz, president of the Walt Disney Company at the time, personally was going to take a ride to see if it could be salvaged. Allegedly, cast members picked the worst sub in the fleet, and even went as far as to pour water on the floor to make it seem like the leaks were beyond salvageable. Their ruse worked, and since the Disney Company was hemorrhaging money from the failure of Euro Disney at the time, and no other company wanted to sponsor this ride, whatever efforts that were put into keeping 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea alive were left at the bottom of the ocean. The plot will become an Ariel meet and greet from 1996 to 2004, and then a Winnie the Pooh meet and greet from 2005 to 2010, before construction would begin on the Fantasyland expansion that would debut in 2012. October 12th, 2012. Under the Sea, Journey of the Little Mermaid soft opened in the new Fantasyland. Guests would enter through a cave underneath a waterfall. There's some game you could play with the blue crab, but I never really understood it. But it does look cool. You see a little blue crab put up items through a screen that's made to look like display glass. Right before you board, you see Scuttle going through his collection of washed up goods. Finally, once on board, you're ready to ride the clamshells, similar to what the Seas with Nemo and Friends have. The first scene shows Scuttle sitting on a rock playing an accordion discussing the story of the Little Mermaid before falling backwards under the sea. You see Ariel showing off her thingamabobs as she sings part of their world as Flounder looks on. Guests then hear Sebastian as he talks about life under the sea before breaking into a sing and dance number. Sebastian starts singing and all the fish lose their minds as they start dancing. Although it's more of a whole bunch of stationary fish cutouts, moving like it's a carousel. Things suddenly get spooky as Flossom and Jetsam lurk above a cave as they plot to send Ariel to Ursula to steal her voice. Ursula can be seen singing Poor Unfortunate Soul in her lair, peering into her crystal ball. Wish as she sprouts legs and is able to go on a boat date with Prince Eric. And this has to be one of the oddest scenes I've ever seen in my entire life. Can someone please explain to me why these ducks are playing the turtles like that? I mean, it's not even the drum part that I have an issue with. I can let it go if they play their shells, at least that makes some cartoon sense. But why on God's green earth are they playing their bellies? I mean, and even worse, why are their faces like that? What is going on in this scene? If you could figure it out, please tell me. But I digress. You see a silhouette of Eric and Ariel kissing to get her voice back, while Ursula gets the absolute crap zapped out of her. The gang all rejoices at the wedding as fireworks explode. Part of their world instrumental plays, and we end where we began, back with Scuttle chatting us up. Despite all the technical problems with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it never really deterred from my enjoyment. I do recall the windows being foggy and not being able to clear them up, but I remember it being annoying, but it didn't really alter my ride experience. But I may have been too young to remember exactly how bad it was. I also don't remember any of the water leaks, but if someone was on one of these terrible subs, please let me know what it was like. The ride was just so different from anything else, especially in Magic Kingdom. When you think of defunct Disney classics, Epcot usually has the market covered in that department. Looking back at the undertaking Disney took just to make this ride possible makes me look back on this attraction even more fondly. And I do miss how cool the submarines looked in the huge pool right in the middle of Fantasyland. Journey of the Little Mermaid probably should have been built a lot sooner than it was, but there is a lot to like about this ride. The queue is beautiful and has a ton to look at, which seems insignificant until you realize that just so many times the line just stops moving for whatever reason. The opening scene where you see the water rise on the clamshell in front of you is a great detail. Some of the scenes are a little wonky, but it adds a certain charm to this ride. The soundtrack is a classic, playing all the hits from the original movie. If you grew up loving the VHS, there isn't much here that would disappoint you. And if you have younger fans in your party, and may be one of their favorites if you're looking to book your first family trip. So this is where we have to pick a winner, and it's not particularly close. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is by far the better attraction in my opinion. A big reason why is I feel Journey of the Little Mermaid is a tad underwhelming. My friend described it as a lesser version of The Seas with Nemo and Friends. Nemo had to fit their ride into an existing show building, whereas The Little Mermaid was built from the ground up. It seems like they got a bunch of plastic fish and threw them into random rooms. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is probably the first attraction people think of when they think of Magic Kingdom rides that are no longer operational. It's a shame it wasn't built in a time where technology was sophisticated enough to make an entire underwater attraction stand the test of time. Also, the financial hardships and blunders the Disney company was going through at the time. It makes me wonder how advanced the parks would be as a whole if the Euro Disney wasn't such a drain on the company and all the closures that came in its wake. A quick story before we wrap up. My uncle is incredibly claustrophobic and didn't realize how small the cabins were in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He told the cast member he wouldn't be able to go through with the ride, but was informed that once the hatch was closed, that was it. He proceeded to throw a fit and was promptly kicked off the boat, but luckily not kicked out of the park. I feel bad for the people that witnessed it, and even more the people waiting online, given how terrible the wait times were already. But that'll do it for this episode. We're so close to our first milestone of 50 subs, and I would love it if you guys were there on that journey with me. But tune in next time as we go off to work in the mines and stay in New Fantasyland. But drop a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe if I earned it, and thank you for watching.